Wait, what's happening?
Get in the car.
I have money though, like don't do this.
No, get in the car.
Gabriel Garcia Marquez has gained leadership across the globe because of his worldwide readership with his brand of magical realism. Don't you agree, guys? When you read News of Kidnapping, you feel as though you're the one being kidnapped. Marquez was born in Arcata, Colombia on March 6, 1927. His childhood consisted of listening to fairy tales, and as soon as he became a journalist, his work has gained popularity in magical realism, which combines more conventional storytelling with vivid fantasy. His other works are 100 Years of Solitude and Love in Time of Cholera. Marquez was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for Literature in 1982. Acknowledgements in the beginning of the book, Marquez reveals that he was almost done with the first draft when he decided that he needed to broaden the focus of the story. Originally, he was going to describe the experiences of a single abductee, Maruja Pachin, but he decided to make it a larger picture and bring politics in the story. Marquez mixed personal drama with the chronicles of national trauma. The News of a Kidnapping was originally published in Spanish in 1996, but in 1997 there was an English translation released. The main plot of the book is involved with the Medellin cartel and gives an extremely accurate description of life in Colombia during the 1990s. The book opens with the abduction of the journalist Maruja Pachon de Villamizar and her sister-in-law Beatriz Villamizar. Another kidnapping of the famous Colombian Diana Turbe and 5 members of her crew. Some of the prisoners are released, but Diana is killed with the Colombian elite corps raid the farm where she is held captive. Maria Montoya is kidnapped because of her relationship with her nephew, who made a bad deal with Pablo Escobar's crew. Finally, Pacho is taken because he is an editor-in-chief of El Tiempo, the largest newspaper in Colombia. All 10 carefully thought-out abductions were Escobar's attempt to extort from the government its insurance that he and other narcotics traffickers would not be extradited to the United States if they were to surrender. In this book, there are people that are high in politics and the people of the drug cartels. There are characters that have high background jobs and advantages, but still get abducted.
Kidnapping, murder, cocaine, and disease, all things that associate with the name Pablo Escobar and the infamous Medellin cartel out of Colombia that controlled the vast money-making business called the cocaine market. At the peak of their reign, the Medellin cartel controlled over 80% of the cocaine being smuggled into the United States. It was stated that they were bringing in $420 million a week, along with smuggling 15 tons of coke a day to the United States. Their leader, Pablo Escobar, became so rich he was named one of the 10 richest people on Earth by the Forbes magazine. His estimated net worth was upwards of around $30 billion. Starting from modest beginnings, Pablo Escobar was born December 1st, 1949 in the town of Rio Negro, Antioquia. Always knowing that he wanted to become a leader, he was quick on the path to stardom as he set his goals on becoming the president as a young boy. However, that path took a wrong turn as he quickly fell off down the beaten path and entered the crime business, getting his start as a petty thief before entering the drug trade. During the 70s, he began his rise to prominence in the game after he became a key player in the Marlboro Wars, which was the fight for control of Colombia's smuggled cigarette market. Taking from what he learned in the Marlboro Wars, Escobar entered the newly developing cocaine market. Cashing in on the geographical location of Colombia proved to be one of the best business decisions he ever made. The year was 1975, and after placing a hit on the previous drug lord, Escobar quickly seized control of the newly taken over enterprise and turned it into a cocaine monopoly. Despite being the head of one of the most infamous drug cartels in human existence, Pablo Escobar was viewed as a Robin Hood-like figure. He started social welfare programs, sponsored soccer teams, brought a public view to Colombia, and was even elected to Congress. His history, however, though, caught up to him as he was soon forced into resignation as his violent history was slowly being discovered. Because he soon realized becoming president of Colombia was out of the picture, he began unleashing his power. The Medellin cartel became responsible for the deaths of thousands of people, including journalists, politicians, presidential candidates, judges, ordinary people, and over 1,000 police officers. Realizing he wouldn't be able to hide his past, he agreed to build the prison of all prisons for himself to stay locked in. And after escaping that prison, he went on a 16-month manhunt, leading to his death on December 2nd, 1993, when law enforcement finally caught up to him. The book touches up on his influence as we see his political influence all throughout the chapters. His name opens many doors but leaves tracks of violence, as seen throughout much of the book.
The next segment on this episode, based on news of a kidnapping, covers the approach on terrorism that the book takes in comparison to the real world. The question that arises is, how can terrorism be dealt with in the world of news of a kidnapping, as well as in the real world? In the book, the Medellin cartel runs the story. They perform violent actions to help them along their own agenda. Killing, kidnapping, and drugs are the drive for news of a kidnapping, and these actions are all part of the Medellin's cartel's terrorism of Colombia. In the novel, the cartel chooses to terrorize Colombia in an effort to avoid a treaty of extradition between Colombia and the United States. If the treaty was passed, the members of the cartel would be legally allowed to be sent to the United States to be tried for their crimes. The solution the cartel decided to act upon was to kidnap multiple people that held some sort of political value or connection to a certain politician in an effort to blackmail the Colombian government from accepting the policy of extradition. In news of a kidnapping, the Colombian government recognizes the kidnappings as terrorism and takes multiple steps to resolve the issue. They send police officers to investigate the actions of the cartel, and they also establish a special force to work against them. Aside from the government, guerrilla forces of Colombia have also fought against the cartel and attempted to fight against their terrorism. Some individuals affected by the killings and kidnappings also tried to investigate on their own to resolve the situation. The terrorism and question of how it should be dealt with are also prevalent in the real world. Today, one of the large issues in the United States is terrorism. Since the form of the country, domestic terrorism has been an issue, in the beginning between Native Americans and the people who first domesticated there and the colonists. Today, foreign terrorism is more prevalent with groups such as ISIS. If the United States were to solve the issue of terrorism based on the book, government forces would fight back against the terrorist groups. United States guerrillas would combat the terrorists along with individuals related to the people affected by ISIS. However, the solution the book proposes doesn't fit perfectly with the problem the U.S. has. The terrorism in the novel, or the book, is mainly domestic, whereas the terrorism in the U.S. is mainly foreign. Ultimately, in news of a kidnapping, some of the prisoners are released without touching death. Some might say that since the victims were released, the plan that the Colombian government used in the novel was effective and should be used to deal with the United States issue of terrorism as well.
Many of the drug-related events that occurred in Colombia during the 1980s and written about in Gabriel Garcia Marquez's News of a Kidnapping also describes what is happening today in Mexico. Marquez's non-fiction book describes the tactics of Pablo Escobar and his Medellin drug cartel used to influence the political and social life in Colombia. One of Escobar's most common tactics was kidnapping important people and their families, including judges, politicians, and reporters. The book concerns the kidnapping in the 1980s of Maria Pancho, a journalist, and her 6 months in captivity during the same period. 12 other people and Supreme Court judges were murdered. Politicians and police were commonly bribed to ensure that the cartels would be able to export drugs, mostly cocaine, to the United States through Mexico. At his height of his power, Escobar controlled 80% of the cocaine entering the United States and was making over $2 billion a year. After Escobar and his Medellin cartel were finally broken, the Mexican drug dealers who had done business with Escobar adopted many of his tactics, including kidnapping, extreme violence, and bribery, tactics that were still being used today. Escobar's old drug pipeline from Colombia to Mexico to the United States continues today, with drugs entering mostly through the states of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. And the kidnapping has remained rampant, with many of parts of Arizona thought to be controlled by Mexican drug cartels, causing the U.S. government to put up signs along the border warning people that if they enter this area, they're in a high risk of abduction. Mexican drug cartels have adopted Escobar's use of extreme violence against both rival drug lords and innocent civilians to ensure that no one acts against them. According to CNN, there is an average of 20,000 drug-related homicides in Mexico each year, and just as Escobar did, with vast profits from drug allowed the cartel to bribe the police and politicians at even the highest level. And according to Business Insider, it is estimated that each year the Mexican drug cartel spent more than $1 billion bribing police. And in 2008, the Mexican former top anti-drug official Neo Ramirez was charged with giving advanced information to the cartels about investigating that could have threatened their drug routes. Ramirez was compensated by the cartels with reportedly $450,000 a month. News of the kidnapping is written about events that happened over 30 years ago, but today is as current as ever.
News of a Kidnapping takes place in Bogota, Colombia, and starts off with the kidnapping of Maruja Pachon and her sister-in-law, Beatriz Villamizar. They are part of a group of 10 men and women who have been taken and held captive by the Pablo Escobar drug cartel in an attempt to change a new government policy. This is a prime example of the circumstances the country of Colombia endured in the late 1990s, including currency collapses, death squads, and drug trafficking. Now let's take a moment to think about the impact Pablo Escobar had on Colombia. What if he had not been the powerful figure to rule the cocaine industry? Would somebody have been the one to take his spot and be the ruler of the industry? Would the narco-terrorism have even started? Would less cocaine have been smuggled into America? Perhaps, had Escobar not been such a powerful leader, Maruja, Beatriz, and the rest of the people would not have been held captive and suffered such a traumatizing experience. The book ends with the hostages being released. When in prison, he yet again gains power and turns the prison into a no-rules pleasure palace with expensive furniture. It was decided he would be transferred to a different prison when the government found out about the power he had over the current prison he was in. But before he could be transferred, he bribed one of the guards to help him escape, and he later lived on the run for a few years. But what if he had never escaped? Would he have been extradited to the United States at one point?
The whole story would be completely different if Pablo Escobar wasn't the main cartel leader. We discussed about how cartels and gangs participate in a big part of kidnapping and drug trafficking. We compared kidnapping stories today and comparing them to the story in the book. There are big questions the book answers, and we use real world to connect to the book in real life. The big what if questions are if Pablo Escobar wasn't the way he is, or if he wasn't a part of the cartel at all, how would the story turn out? Would there be the same amount of cocaine and drugs smuggled? Would there be as much violence? What everyone thinks of the book is that the story is mainly just kidnappings and violence, and how things haven't changed since then. There are cartels and gangs still who contribute to this violence. I think that the overall theme of drugs and violence was heavy throughout. It was all the kidnappings associated with political power and drugs, and how heavy Pablo Escobar carried out the violence. He had so much power, he basically bribed most politicians and whoever didn't agree with him. The story did a good job of narrating the kidnappings, and at the same time showed what was happening outside of the kidnapping in Colombia. The battle with the war on drugs is very difficult because drugs are always going to be around. There is so much money involved that makes people want to continue. 30 years is a long time. Time changes. As the era evolves, the game never changes.
Ahí está el saborcito. Abre tu atarraya.